Hey guys, tonight we drift into the forgotten corners of the Caribbean, where moonlight slinks across cracked dock planks and whispers ride the salt-thick breeze. You're in Nassau, sometime in the early 18th century, though the locals don't care much for calendars. Time bends differently when your trade involves stolen sugar, storm dodging, and the occasional misfired cannonball. You hear boots, bare feet, laughter. The dock creaks with the weight of stories. And somewhere in the haze of sweat, rum, and rotting fruit, someone new arrives. He walks barefoot. Not the usual poor man's barefoot. This isn't the cracked, reluctant kind. His steps are deliberate, confident, like the sand obeys him. His hair is long and water dark, always damp, even on dry days. And his skin bears an odd hue. Sun-bronzed, sure, but with something pearly beneath, like moonlight skimmed off a tide-pool. He doesn't announce himself. Just strolls in, like Nassau's always been waiting for him, and then he says it. The thing that changes everything. I come from Atlantis. You probably won't survive this. At least, not without getting dragged into at least 3 drunken debates and 1 suspicious treasure hunt. But you will want to know more. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, let me know where you're listening from, and what time it is where you are. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You first spot him in the harbor market, inspecting a bruised mango with the quiet seriousness of a diplomat. No one knows his name. He trades a coin you don't recognize for a clay jug of water. Not rum. Not grog. Water. That's when you realize something's off. He asks questions that make no sense. How deep is the well? Do the stars still move backward in September? Have the seabirds forgotten the prayers yet? People laugh. At first. Then they stop. Because he says it like he believes it. He shows up later at the tavern, the Salty Galleon, where the chairs wobble worse than the clientele. He finds a corner, orders nothing, but somehow has a mug in front of him anyway. No one sees him drink from it, and then the stories begin. He speaks softly, but people lean in. Says he was born under the sea, not beneath it, but inside it. That Atlantis wasn't a city, it was a fleet. That its temples moved like turtles, and its ships could dive deeper than whales. He talks of pearl cities and towers carved from coral, of fireless light, of songs that calm storms. He says he remembers the sinking, that it wasn't a punishment, but a plan, and he says calmly that he is the last of them. You wait for someone to laugh, for someone to throw a shrimp, but no one does, because somehow he makes it sound reasonable. He speaks in that same even tone you'd used to talk about the weather, or the quality of fish this season. Except he's talking about hidden vaults and leviathans and underwater libraries sealed with salt runes. Historians still argue whether any of this actually happened, if there was such a man, or if he was a stitched-together myth, made up by sailors with too much time and too little sobriety. Some say the story of the Atlantis pirate was an elaborate hoax. Others think he was a spy using mysticism to cover his tracks. One French scholar was convinced he was just a bored nobleman with too many books and not enough supervision. But you remember how quiet the tavern went, and how someone, maybe it was you, leaned a little closer. He said his ship had no sails, that it followed the currents like a fish, that it could sing to whales. You picture a barrel-shaped boat pulsing with sea magic, slicing through dark trenches, and shudder a little. Not out of fear, out of curiosity. You asked him his name. He doesn't answer, but he smiles, a small thing, not secretive, just tired. Later, you watch him trace something into the condensation on his mug. It looks like a spiral, or a maze, or a map. The bartender leans over. asks what it means. It's where I'm going, he says. Or maybe where I've already been. He wipes it away with one finger. The mug leaves no mark, and that's the part that sticks with you. Hours later, as you're trying to sleep off 3 rations of rum and a particularly unfortunate seafood pie. He wasn't trying to convince anyone. He was remembering. The next morning, you find his footprints in the sand, wide, flat, perfect, leading to nowhere, not into a boat, not into a door, just down the beach and out into the sea. You spot him again the next evening, back at the salty galleon. Same corner, same quiet stare. His mug's already there, though no one remembers serving him. The barmaid swears he never ordered. The cook insists he saw the mug pour itself, but tonight he speaks a little more. You slide into the bench near him, not directly across. No one sits directly across, but within earshot. The tavern is rowdy as ever. Cards slap the table. A man yells about his turnip stew being mostly radish. Someone's trying to tune a fiddle with no strings. Still, when he speaks, the room folds in around his words. He starts with a tale about a ship made entirely of shell. Said it shimmered like fish scales and hummed when it moved. Its crew didn't speak. Not because they were mute, but because they didn't need to. Said their thoughts passed like waves, and that every command was a feeling, not a sound. You raise an eyebrow, sip something questionable, and lean back. He goes on. Tells of sea beasts older than islands, that served as living beacons for Atlantean vessels. Of storms that parted for their passage. Of treasure that grew like coral, living, breathing gold. It didn't clink, it sang. He talks of a queen made of glass, and of a boy who fled the drowning city with nothing but a crystal tooth and a compass that didn't point north. The crew around you laughs nervously, but they stay. Some pretend not to listen while clearly eavesdropping. One man, an old Portuguese helmsman with ears like folded maps, says, "Heard that tale before, but from a dream." The Atlantean smiles, as if that's the correct answer. He rolls up his sleeve at some point, revealing inkwork unlike anything you've seen. It doesn't look drawn, it looks written. Fine lines that curl and not like fishhooks drag through ink. At first, it seems abstract. Then you realize it's a coastline, or a current map, or both. One tattoo near his elbow seems to shift as he moves, like water behind glass. You blink. It stills. Someone else notices. Doesn't blink. Says nothing. Just walks out, muttering about needing air. Historians still argue whether such tattoos existed, whether some pirates used ink to pass on secrets, smuggling routes, buried caches, protected bays. There are accounts of sailors who branded each other with navigational sigils. But nothing like this. Nothing alive. He speaks of stars, too. Not the usual follow Polaris and hope for the best kind of stars. He talks about the stars beneath the sea, patterns seen only in certain depths, where bioluminescent creatures form constellations of their own. You've never heard of such things, but it sounds reasonable. In that way only unreasonable things can be. You ask him what he's looking for. He replies, "I'm not looking. I'm waiting." You ask what for. He says, "For something that remembers me." No one knows what to do with that. He doesn't talk like a man. Doesn't rant or foam. Doesn't shove a spoon in anyone's face screaming prophecy. He just shares. Like someone flipping through an old diary, surprised someone else finds it interesting. You try to test him, ask him about sailing terms, old pirate codes, weather signs. He answers all of it, but then adds bits you've never heard. Like the dead water, just beyond the Sargasso Sea, where oars slow for no reason and birds refuse to land. Or the whale cross, a reef pattern visible only during moon tides, shaped like a skeleton, marking old Atlantean outposts. You ask why he shares this. He shrugs. Says, someone has to remember it. Another sailor tries to call his bluff, says Atlantis is nonsense, a drunken Greek parable. The stranger agrees. Of course, he says. That's what we wanted you to believe. That's when people stop calling him a liar. They start calling him Captain Atlantis. Not to his face, mind you. But the name sticks. Because no one knows what else to call him. And he doesn't offer an alternative. You learn he has no ship of his own. No known crew. He appears and disappears, sometimes for days. Comes back soaked to the bone even when there's been no rain. Smells of kelp and ash. One man swears he saw fish bones braided into his hair, though when he looked again, nothing. He doesn't gamble. Doesn't fight. Doesn't even seem to eat. But he talks. And you listen. Because every once in a while, one of his stories checks out. He mentions a wreck near Tortuga. Copper rings, marble ballast, no sails. Someone goes looking. They find it. Exactly where he said. Another time, he says there's a cove north of Havana where the tide reverses once a month. Someone laughs, until they find it, and the tide does exactly that, for reasons no one can explain. And then there's the eel thing. One night, he says eels are the only creatures that remember Atlantis. That there it's memory tendrils. You don't think much of it. Until 2 nights later, an eel slithers onto the tavern floor, uninvited, and coils itself under his chair. He doesn't even glance down. He just says, see? You realize something, watching him that night. He doesn't want to be believed. He wants to be heard. Like a man whispering across centuries, hoping someone on the other side will whisper back. You leave the tavern with a head full of sea myths and a taste of salt on your tongue that wasn't in your drink. The moon is high, and you swear, just for a second, the stars above look like they're swimming. The first time you see his tattoos in full daylight, you're not even sure they are tattoos. He's shirtless, seated on a crate near the dock's edge, sun glinting off seawater clinging to his skin. The light hits him, and something strange happens. What looked like ink before now shimmers faintly, like oil on water. You blink, squint, look again. The shimmer's gone. Or maybe it wasn't ever there. You approach slowly, pretending to inspect a nearby fishing net that absolutely does not belong to you. He doesn't look up, but somehow seems aware of you. He always does. From shoulder to wrist, and collarbone to hip, his skin is traced with lines so fine they look like veins. Not tribal markings. Not the anchors and mermaids typical of sailors. No skulls, no flags, no dates of dead friends. These are diagrams. Or something like them. A spiraling compass on his upper chest. A series of jagged waves that climb one shoulder, then spill down his back like a frozen waterfall. And near his ribs, lines that resemble coastlines, only none you've ever seen. You study maps. You know coastlines. But one of them looks oddly like the curve of the African West, minus everything. It's missing whole continents. It's just one crescent of land, surrounded by hundreds of islands that don't exist. Yet it feels familiar. Like a map drawn from memory rather than from fact. He notices you looking. You read charts? He asks, voice low and casual, as if he were commenting on the weather. You nod. Then you know that no map is ever finished. You want to ask him if these are real places. If he's been there. If he drew them from life. But you hesitate. Because in that moment, you realize something. These markings aren't for you. They're for him. Historians still argue whether early sailors used tattoos to record information. Some kind of personal atlas, charting travels and observations in ways that could never be stolen or soaked through. There are references to Polynesian wayfinders marking tidal patterns into their skin. Norse raiders in the east carved latitude knots along their forearms. But what you're looking at, It's something else. More than a record, a code. And just above his heart, almost invisible unless the sun hits it just right, a small spiral. Perfectly round, tight as a seashell. It pulses, very slightly, when he breathes. You watch him trace it with one finger, absently, like someone scratching an old scar. Then he lifts his hand and draws a second spiral in the air, right next to it. The gesture means nothing to you, but he nods to himself, like something just made sense. You finally speak. Ask him what it all means. He tilts his head. What does any map mean? He says. It means you don't want to be lost. He stands, the sea water dripping from his hair like he's just surfaced from somewhere deep. He doesn't say goodbye. He just walks off the dock and disappears behind a line of rum barrels, leaving behind a faint scent of salt and something faintly metallic. Later, you overhear two deckhands talking. One claims he saw the man in the galley, boiling seawater in a pan until it evaporated. Not to drink it. He left the salt behind. Just watched it. The other says he found a shell under his hammock that hummed when held against the ear, even when no wind blew. There's a third sailor, quiet type, rarely speaks, who finally mutters something. Says the tattoos aren't tattoos at all. That they're growing. You all laugh. But it doesn't last long, because you remember the shimmer, the almost movement, the way the lines curled like waves that didn't stop at the skin's edge. That night you sleep badly. Your dreams are full of scrolls, unrolling endlessly, the lines never repeating, leading into tunnels of light and pressure and ink. You wake up sweaty, your fingers curled like they've been tracing something invisible in your sleep. You don't see the stranger for 3 days after that. Then, at twilight, you spot him again, waist deep in the surf, facing away from the beach. He's not moving, just standing. The tide crashes in, foams around him, retreats. He stays. A child on the dock tosses a stone near him. It skips twice, then sinks. The man doesn't flinch. Someone calls his name, not that anyone knows his name. They call him Salt. He doesn't respond. Eventually, the sun disappears. The stars begin their slow flicker. And still he stands there, as if listening to something too quiet for anyone else to hear. You leave before he does. You don't want to see whether he walks out of the water, or vanishes into it. The next morning, the quartermaster decides he's had enough. Pirate crews, as you've come to know, tolerate a lot. Smugglers with fake mustaches, rum-sodden ghost stories, even a man who once claimed to be the reincarnation of Julius Caesar. He wasn't. But what they don't like, what they absolutely cannot abide, is a mystery that refuses to explain itself. So, the quartermaster sets up what he calls a polite inquisition, which is really just a nice way of saying, we're going to interrogate the barefoot sea weirdo in the galley over breakfast. You're there, of course. You pretend you're just leaning against a barrel, sipping something warm. But your ears are wide open. He sits cross-legged on a crate, calmly peeling an orange with a bone knife. His expression is neutral, relaxed, almost amused. Where are you from, truly? The quartermaster asks, tone more tired than angry. No riddles. I told you, says the stranger, gently prying a seed from the fruit. Atlantis. The quartermaster snorts. Right. The city that sank. The one no one's ever found. Not a city, he says, eyes on the orange. A nation. A fleet. A memory. Fleet? Someone echoes. The man nods. It moved. It was never meant to stay in one place. That was the mistake. There's a silence. You feel the tension rise, not hostile, but sharp, like air just before lightning. Someone knocks over a tin spoon, and it clatters like a dropped dagger. The quartermaster leans forward. If you're Atlantean, prove it. Tell me something only you would know. The man looks up then. Not smug. Not angry. Just curious. He points at the map on the wall, the standard sailor's chart of the Caribbean. Here, he says, pointing near the edge, is wrong. Wrong how? Your latitude's off by a hair. That island. He taps it with a citrus sticky finger. It drifted a bit last winter. You haven't corrected for it. Islands don't drift. The cook mutters. The man tilts his head. Everything drifts. You're not sure if he means tectonics or philosophy. Someone else chimes in, asks about a real place, a reef near the Leeward Islands known only to a few. The stranger describes it perfectly, even adds a warning. Don't dive near the third coral tower. It sings. Sings? Another pirate scoffs. The man looks directly at him. You'll know it if you hear it. And you'll wish you hadn't. Historians still argue whether pirates truly navigated using some cues, like patterns of waves, or whale calls, or the tone of wind against certain sails. Polynesian navigators certainly did, and there are scattered reports of Caribbean sailors describing song waters, but no consensus exists. The quartermaster, clearly flustered, changes tactics. What's your real name? The man shrugs. I've had many, but the one that's lasted longest is Moreau. You roll the name around in your head. It doesn't sound English, or Spanish, or Portuguese, but it feels old, tidal. And why are you here, Moreau? The quartermaster presses. To see what's changed, he says. To find what remembers. To steal, more like, mutters someone in the back. Moreau looks directly at him. I haven't stolen anything. Oh yeah? The man challenges. I only take what's already been forgotten. It's such a strange reply. No one knows how to respond. You get the sense that if he had claimed to be a god, people might have laughed. If he'd claimed to be mad, they'd have mocked him. But claiming to be from a place no one can prove existed? That unsettles them. Because there's nothing to argue with. Nothing to hold. Just a story with no edges. After the meeting breaks up, awkward and inconclusive, you linger. Ask him quietly if it's true. About the drifting island. He nods. A slow slip, he says. Only a few feet. But it matters. You ask how he knows. He smiles faintly. Because I saw it. From underneath. That afternoon, you find yourself pulling out old charts, comparing notes, tracing islands with your finger, and wondering how many other places have drifted while no one was looking. That night, Moreau isn't at the tavern, or on the beach, or anywhere. You ask around. No one's seen him. Until dawn. That's when someone finds his footprints again, leading from the forest edge down to the sea. This time, they're accompanied by another set. Smaller. Barefoot too, but no one saw who made them. When the captain hears about Moreau's claim of Atlantis, about the maps, the tattoos, the odd footprints appearing and vanishing like mist, he doesn't laugh like you expect him to. Instead, he says, "Well, I've chased worse things for profit." And just like that, a voyage is planned. Not because the captain believes in Atlantis. Not exactly. But because a man like Moreau, who speaks in riddles and smells faintly of seawater even in a dry room, is too interesting to ignore. And more importantly, the man knew things. Secret things. Useful things. Hidden coves. Uncharted shallows. Shipwrecks whispered about in hushed tones across 5 ports. Moreau doesn't object to being brought along. He simply says, "It's not where we're going. It's where we'll pass through." You don't even bother asking what that means. The next day, the crew sets out, sails full, compass twitching, and a nervous energy humming through the planks like lightning waiting to strike. You're aboard, of course. Curiosity is a powerful wind. And besides, you want to see if any of this sea myth talk holds water. The map Moreau offers isn't made of parchment. It's a series of marks scratched into the underside of a turtle shell. You don't question it. He places it on the captain's table, lines a few tiny sea glass beads along its curve, and points silently at a spot just northeast of known charts. A stretch of sea no one usually crosses, because there's nothing there. No islands, no trade winds, no rumors worth chasing, which is exactly why pirates tend to avoid it. That, and the sea there is oddly flat, almost still. Sailors call it the blue silence. You set off the next morning. At first, everything feels normal. Waves, wind, familiar creaks. But as the days pass, you notice strange changes. The wind softens. The gulls vanish. The horizon turns blurry, like you're sailing through glass. And the water? It's too calm. No chop. No whitecaps. Just endless blue. Like a painted ocean in a forgotten theater set. Moreau spends most of the voyage at the bow, silent, staring forward like a man waiting for a reunion. You think about asking him what he sees. But then you decide not to. You already know the answer wouldn't make sense. About 3 days into the stillness, things get odd. Not frightening. Just off. The ship's bell rings once at midnight, even though no one pulls the rope. A barrel of dried squid rehydrates itself overnight. No leak. Just wet again. And then there's the fog. It rolls in low and pale, hugging the surface, never rising above your knees. Everyone aboard pretends it's fine. Fog happens after all. It's natural. But this fog smells faintly of crushed shells. Moreau walks through it barefoot, as usual. The fog doesn't cling to him. It parts around him, like he's not quite there. The cook drops a ladle. It bounces twice and disappears into the mist. You never find it. That night, Moreau marks a spot on the deck with a bit of blue chalk and tells the captain to stop. "Drop anchor here," he says. "You're floating above an old gate." "A gate to what?" the captain asks. "To somewhere that isn't." The crew laughs, but the anchor still goes down. Clunks, rattles, hits, something. But it doesn't sound like sand or rock. It sounds hollow. Historians still debate if there are truly sunken ports, lost to the sea, ancient civilizations beneath the Caribbean, older than anything European, possibly linked to seafaring cultures who mapped the stars in coconut husks and sang to their sails. But evidence remains elusive, and skepticism reigns. Still, you hear it. A sound, faint but clear, from below the hull. A note. Not a creak or groan. A tone. Musical. Sustained. Like something ancient humming just beneath the surface. It rises. Peaks. Fades. Moreau closes his eyes. No one sleeps well that night. When morning comes, the water is completely still. The wind has died entirely. The sails hang limp. No clouds. No birds. Just a pale blue dome above and a darker blue bowl below. You look over the edge and swear you see shapes moving down there. Not fish. Structures. Archways. Stone. Something geometric that flickers just beyond the visibility line, as though light itself hesitates to look too close. Then Moreau says, "We're done." The crew groans. "That's it." He nods. "It's not time to go further." One sailor mutters, "We came all this way for what? Fog and humming?" But no one protests the return trip, because something about the stillness feels watched. You haul the anchor. There's no seaweed, just a thin film of shimmering dust, like powdered pearl. That evening, as the sails catch a lazy breeze and the ship begins its slow return, you glance back at the horizon. You see nothing, but you feel something. As if something vast and ancient just closed its eyes again beneath the waves. You're back in Nassau, days later, docked and dried and mostly sober, though the memories of that glassy stretch of sea still cling to your thoughts like salt in a beard. The crew doesn't talk much about what happened. Not because they're scared, well, not exactly, but because no one knows how to describe what they saw. The cook insists the humming was just the wind playing tricks. The helmsman mutters about underwater gas vents. A particularly loud deckhand declares it was all an elaborate prank involving mirrors and rum. He's ignored, but you can tell no one really believes those explanations. They're just stories people tell to keep the silence from getting too loud. And Moreau? He's gone again. No goodbyes. No farewells. Just a damp ring where his mug used to sit, and a faint smell of driftwood left in his hammock. Someone claims to have seen him wading out into the surf again, this time wearing a cloak made of something translucent, like jellyfish silk or shredded glass. The captain says nothing. Just orders repairs and drinks heavily. You figure that's the end of it. One strange voyage. A ghost story with good weather. But then something even stranger happens. Miro returns, and this time, he brings writing. He arrives at dusk, casually strolling up the gangplank like it's a garden path. In his hands, a roll of thick, soggy paper that smells of ink and brine and a little like crushed lavender. He doesn't speak. Just hands it to you. You unroll it carefully. It's covered in symbols. They're not in any language you know. Not Latin. Not Greek. Not anything in the sailor's lexicon of crude poetry and vague threats. The letters twist and ripple, more like choral formations than text. You blink, and for a moment, you almost understand it. Then it slips away again. Moreau tilts his head. Some of it's changed since I last wrote it. You wrote this? You ask. He nods. More like remembered it. You take it to the ship's scribe, a scowling man who treats spelling errors like personal insults. He studies the page for hours. Tries to copy it. The ink refuses to stick. Every attempt dissolves. The paper drinks it up, and the copy fades. So you do the only logical thing. You start showing the writing to anyone who'll look. A woman in the market claims she's seen a pattern like that in a tide pool once, etched into a shell. A Spanish priest says it looks eerily similar to a symbol found in a ruined monastery crypt back in the Canary Islands. One child says it looks like what the waves were whispering last night. And then someone spots something even weirder. When you leave the writing in moonlight, it moves. Not visibly. Not like animation. But when you look away and look back, the letters have shifted. Just a little. Moreau seems utterly unsurprised. It's learning you, he says. You stare at him. Learning me? He nods. It's not meant to be read. It's meant to remember. Historians still argue whether secret seafaring languages existed. Coded runes, rotating alphabets, glyphs embedded in knots or sails. But what you're looking at isn't code. It's something older. Not encrypted, just alive. That night the wind returns. But it brings more than just air. Your ship creaks in its sleep. The sails flutter like restless blankets. And from below deck, something groans. Not wood. Not rope. Something deeper. You descend slowly, lantern in hand, expecting rats. Or worse. Instead, you find the writing again, on the wall this time, scratched into the inside of the hull, and the exact same symbols as the scroll. No one admits to doing it. And Nero? He's on the beach again, sitting on a rock with his back to the moon. The waves don't reach him. They curve away, like shy animals. You ask him how the writing got there. He smiles. It wanted to be closer. Closer to what? To you. That's when you realize something uncomfortable. This story you're in, you're not just listening to it anymore. You're in it. It's changing you. You lie awake that night, listening to the creak of wood, the hush of tide, the hush of ink drying into words you can't read, but which now feel familiar. In your dream, you walk through a city made of salt and crystal, lit by fireless lanterns. The air hums with memory. And you hear a name echo through the streets, yours. When you wake, your palms are damp, and there's a tiny spiral on the inside of your left thumb, drawn in some kind of iridescent ink. You didn't put it there. But somehow, you know exactly what it means. The spiral on your thumb doesn't wash off. You try soap, seawater, even a lemon which someone swears will lift any ink. Nothing. The mark stays, subtle, but persistent. Just beneath the skin, like a shadow that forgot how to fade. Moreau doesn't say anything when he sees it. Just nods, like this is all very expected. You've been marked, he says. Marked by what? Not what, he says. Where? That doesn't help, obviously. But he's already wandering off toward the harbor again, his footprints briefly glowing in the damp sand before the tide swallows them. Back on the ship, the crew's restless. Not afraid exactly. Pirates don't like to admit fear, but noticeably quieter. More cautious. Tools are misplaced. Nets tangle themselves. One of the ropes in the rigging ties itself into a perfect sailor's knot overnight. No one confesses to doing it, and the writing on the hull? It spreads, slowly, thoughtfully, curling around beams and planks like ivy. Always overnight. Always just a little more. No one sees it appear. It simply is, by morning. The scribe refuses to go below deck anymore. Meanwhile, you're seeing spirals everywhere. I in the shape of stirred grog. In the pattern left by drying salt water. In the clouds. You'd laugh it off, but then you find a piece of driftwood on the dock, clearly broken off from a different ship, older, charred on one end. And there, burned into the wood, is the same spiral, this time 2 of them, interlocked. You show Moreau. He takes it gently, like a relic, and holds it to his ear. You expect a joke, a cryptic metaphor. But he just closes his eyes and says, "They're closer than I thought." You want to ask who they are, or what he's listening for. But something about the way he says it makes you stay quiet. That evening, a storm rolls in fast, too fast. No time to tie down the cargo or reef the sails. The sky splits open like a dropped melon, and the rain falls sideways. The kind of storm that tests planks, people, and prayers. You're below deck, trying to keep barrels from rolling like drunk acrobats. When it happens, the writing on the walls glows, not brightly, just enough to catch your eye. A soft, bluish shimmer, like moonlight passed through a jellyfish. It pulses with each crack of thunder, like it's breathing. Or maybe, listening, someone yells above deck. You rush topside, and there, in the midst of the wind and water and confusion, Moreau is standing at the bow, arms wide, face turned to the sky. The storm doesn't touch him. Rain arcs around him like he's wearing a cloak of air. His hair whips in the wind, but his body stays completely still. Balanced, centered, as if the ship itself is using him to stay afloat. The captain curses, tries to shout over the noise, but even his voice fades beneath the howl of the sea. And then, as quickly as it began, the storm stops. Like someone flipped a switch, rain ceases. Clouds vanish. The sea settles. Everyone's soaked, blinking, panting, except Moreau, who walks calmly back to the mast, dripping only from the knees down. No one speaks for a long time. Finally, the first mate clears his throat and mutters, "That was unnatural." Moreau shrugs. "Only to you?" Later, as the ship dries in the sun, you find a new etching on the deck. Another spiral. But this one's different. It's got depth. Like a whirlpool, carved in impossible precision. You run your finger along it, and for a moment your fingertip cools, like you dipped it in deep water. Historians still debate whether sailors ever had weather rituals, ways of calling off storms, calming winds, negotiating with the sea. There are accounts of sea prayers, bottle charms, drowned coins. But no clear proof, and certainly nothing like this. That night you dream again. But this time you're underwater. Not swimming. Just being. The city is there again. This time closer. Brighter. You walk through streets paved in stone that shifts like sand, past buildings that hum with a low, melodic rhythm, like someone tuning a shell. You find a door. The same spiral is carved into it. You raise your hand to touch it, and wake up gasping. Your thumb? Ice cold, and that spiral, still there. But now, it's grown, just a little dot a second ring around the first. Like a tide, returning. You start keeping gloves on. It's not the cold. The spiral on your thumb no longer chills you. It's the stairs. Because people are noticing. Not just the crew, but dock workers, merchants, even the odd priest who drifts by the harbor whispering about symbols and sins. You catch glances. You hear murmurs. Marked, they say. Salt signed. Bound to the below. You don't know what that means. But the way they say it makes you keep your hands in your pockets a little longer than usual. Moreau, of course, says nothing. He's too busy. You find him building something at the edge of the beach. At first, it looks like a child's sandcastle, awkward piles and uneven towers. But as the tide creeps closer, the structure begins to make sense. It's a spiral, of course. But layered, rising in tiers like a ziggurat made of shells, driftwood, and sea glass. Each level more detailed than the last. He hums as he works, a low, tuneless sound like an old sea shanty heard through thick fog. You ask him what it is. A memory trap, he says. For the parts of the sea that forget. You nod, as if that's a normal thing to say. That evening, a woman arrives at the docks. She's not local. You can tell from the way she walks. Like someone who's spent more time aboard ships than on land. Her clothes are travel-worn, her eyes sharp, and around her neck hangs a pendant in the shape of course, a spiral. She asks for Moreau by name. No one wants to answer. Eventually, you step forward, half out of curiosity, half because you're already too deep in this story to stop now. You ask who she is. She smiles slightly. I'm his sister. You glance at Moreau, who hasn't reacted at all. Just continues stacking coral pieces onto his structure like time isn't real. You ask her where she's from. Below, she says. Same as him. You don't press. You're not sure you want to know. She joins him without a word. Doesn't hug him. Doesn't speak to him. Just begins building beside him, as though she never left. By morning, the structure is twice as tall. It hums faintly when the wind passes through it, like a flute carved by the tide itself. The crew avoids it. Some even move hammocks further inland. But you get closer. You kneel beside it one night when no one's watching, just to see what it feels like. And as you place your palm on one of the middle tiers, gently, respectfully, you hear something. A voice. Not a voice, exactly. A feeling. A wordless impression. Like homesickness for a place you've never seen. It says. Return. That's all, just return. You jerk your hand away. Your heart's pounding. But you feel no fear. Just longing. Historians have found sea shrines before, arrangements of coral and bone believed to be early attempts at speaking to the ocean. Most are dismissed as ritualistic clutter, products of isolation and brine-addled minds. But you're starting to wonder if those builders knew something modern sailors have long forgotten. The next day, Moreau speaks to you directly. It's almost time. For what? For the opening. Of the trap? He shakes his head. No. Of the passage. You don't ask which passage. He looks at your hand. At the spiral. It's taking shape, he says. You stare at it again that night under lamplight. The second ring has grown more distinct. There's a third beginning now, faint but definite. The shape reminds you of something ancient, like ammonite fossils, like the curl of a wave frozen in time. You wonder, briefly, if it's growing on the inside too. Miro gives the crew 2 days warning. The tide will turn then, he says, and we'll need to be at the ledge. No one knows what that means, but no one argues. They prepare the ship again, half from habit, half from superstition. Some quietly by charms. Others reinforce their bunks with crosses or knots or personal relics. One man tries to leave. He comes back with a limp and a story about getting turned around in an alley that wasn't there before. When you ask Moreau what's at the ledge, he simply says, something that used to be above. That night, the waves are silent, not calm, silent. No lapping, no crash, no hiss. As though the ocean has paused its breathing, and beneath that silence, you feel something shift, like an eye opening. You set sail just after twilight. No fanfare, no drumroll. Just the quiet rhythm of oars hitting dark water, sails catching wind that smells faintly of copper and something older, something like wet stone and buried secrets. Moreau stands at the helm this time. The captain gives up his wheel without a word, which surprises everyone. But then again, no one's quite sure who's in charge anymore. The crew avoids Moreau's eyes. You don't. You stand beside him, close enough to hear him muttering under his breath. Not prayers. Not commands. Names. He's reciting names. Some you recognize, ancient kings, drowned explorers, stars. Others? No. Not names you've heard before. Not names from any chart or scroll. Names like Arasa, Niminal, the third that split, and red tide above. They feel like names the ocean would give. And then he says yours. He says it softly. Like a promise. Or a warning. You don't ask how he knows it. By morning you reach the ledge. You feel it before you see it. One moment, the sea is its usual infinite self. The next you feel the ship tip, just slightly, and everything slows. Even time. The sails slacken. Your heartbeat drags. Voices lower. You glance behind you and realize the wake is gone. There are no waves. No ripples. Just stillness. And ahead, the water falls away. You walk carefully to the bow. There, stretching across the horizon, is a line where the sea stops being sea. Not land. Not fog. Just a drop. Like someone cut the ocean with a blade and let the edge hover midair. It's not sharp. Not dramatic. Just wrong. Like the map glitched. Moreau raises one hand. The spiral on his palm glows faintly. And the ship begins to slide forward again. Over the edge. You brace yourself. But instead of falling, you drift. Downward. Gently. Like the ocean is lowering you into something it's been hiding. Below the ledge, the water isn't blue. It's black. But not the kind of black that swallows light. This black reflects. You peer over the side and see your face. But it's not quite you. It's you as you could have been. Older. Or younger. Or never born. Or born in a city that doesn't exist anymore. Historians still argue about sailor myths concerning mirror waters, regions of the sea where the surface acts like a window, not a wall. Places where the dead speak, where ships vanish, where time forgets itself. Most claim these are metaphors for madness. But you're looking into something real. You reach out. The reflection doesn't move with you. It blinks before you do. Moreau watches. It remembers you, he says. What is it? Not what. When. Below, the water flickers. Shapes emerge, not creatures. Not quite buildings. Traces. If you're passing above a city built from light and memory. Archways of shimmering salt. Towers made of echo. Roads paved in silence. The city pulses once. Like a heartbeat. And your spiral burns, Just for a moment, you gasp. Not in pain. In recognition. You know this place that you've never seen it, but your bones lean toward it like iron pulled by a lodestone. The ship begins to hum. Not the planks or sails. The ship. You place your hand on the mast. Feel it vibrate, almost imperceptibly. A note, a tone. Like the city below is calling. Moreau turns the wheel gently. The ship circles slowly, tracing the edge of a pattern you can't quite grasp. You realize he's drawing a spiral, not on paper this time, but on the sea itself. And as he completes it, the reflection below opens. The black water splits in a perfect ring, and beneath it, a shaft of light spirals downward. Not a tunnel. Not a hole. A passage. Moreau steps forward. He turns to you. Offers a hand. You hesitate. This is the point where, in any story, the brave step in and the foolish step back. But this doesn't feel like bravery or folly. It feels like inevitability. So you take his hand and step into the spiral. It's not cold. It's not wet. It's like stepping into memory. You descend, slowly, gently, as if the ocean has let go of its gravity. Around you, currents dance like ribbons. Voices echo faintly, not words, but impressions. Laughter. Footsteps. A lullaby sung by someone who hasn't existed for centuries. You land on something solid. Saltstone, smooth and warm. The passage closes behind you, and there you are, standing in the lost city. It's not Atlantis, not exactly, but it was once, and it is again. You don't remember breathing, but somehow, you're not drowning. You're walking, slowly, carefully, through streets that curve like seashells and shine like moonlight trapped in stone. Everything here is wrong in the gentlest, most beautiful way. The buildings are too tall for shadows. The steps are too shallow to stumble. And the air, if it's air at all, smells like memory, warm citrus, distant rain, and salt. The city doesn't feel ancient. It feels paused. Like someone pressed the world's sleep button 1,000 years ago and forgot to wake it back up. Moreau walks ahead, barefoot as always, his cloak trailing slightly behind him as if reluctant to let go. He doesn't guide you. He doesn't need to. Your feet know where to go. Even if your mind's still catching up. You pass arches that hum when you walk beneath them. Pools of liquid mirror that ripple without touch. A fountain that flows up, not down, its water defying gravity in slow, elegant spirals. You place your hand near the surface. It shivers, recognizes you, and briefly forms the shape of your spiral before falling back into itself. Is this Atlantis? You whisper. Moreau glances back, amused. Atlantis was just one name. This place had many. What do you call it? He shrugs. Home. You pause in front of a wall. It's blank at first glance. But when you blink, it fills with images. Moving images, like scenes projected through fog. You see storms. Ships. Faces you almost know. One of them is yours. Your reflection in the mirror water. The version of you that blinked before you did. They keep all versions here, Burroughs says quietly. Every possibility. Every what if. The city remembers them. You're not sure if that comforts you or unsettles you. Probably both. As you walk, you notice spiral markings carved into every surface. Not just decorative. Functional. Like the city breathes through them. Some are etched into doors. Others are drawn into air vents, chimneys, even stairwells. The more you look, the more you realize. Every path here leads inward. Everything spirals to the center. Why did it sink? You ask. Moreau pauses. Some say it sank because of arrogance, he says. Others say it was hidden to protect it from the surface world. But I think it was always meant to return. Just not all at once. Historians still argue. You say without thinking. He smiles faintly. They would. You pass a circle of stone seats surrounding a strange basin filled with floating sand. As you approach, the sand rises into shapes: a map, a face, a storm, a city falling. You step back instinctively. It's only showing what it remembers, Moreau says. It doesn't judge. It only preserves. He places his palm over the basin. The sand calms instantly. Fades. Will this place rise again? You ask. Not in the way people expect, he replies. It doesn't want to be ruled. It wants to be shared. You reach a large archway at the end of a corridor. Above it, a spiral glows with soft blue light. This is the Hall of Threads, Moreau says. It's where your mark comes from. You touch your thumb again. The third ring is complete now. 3 perfect spirals nested like a conch shell. You step inside. The room is circular, of course. Everything in this city turns. In the center is a pool, calm, dark, still. Around the edge are hundreds of tablets, each etched with spirals and glyphs. Each person marked leaves a memory here, Moreau says. One day, someone else will follow your spiral, and they'll know what you knew. What do I leave? He gestures to the pool. You kneel beside it, and without quite knowing how, you place your hand on the surface that a warmth spreads up your arm. Not heat, exactly, but recognition. Like returning to a place you've only ever seen in dreams. Your mind fills with images: the storm, the humming map, the ledge, the false reflection. You don't try to remember. You just do. The water pulls the memories gently from you, no force, no pain. And when it's done, your hand is dry. It's part of you now, Moreau says. What is? He walks over and holds up your hand. The city. You look at your palm. The spiral has changed again. Not grown. Opened. The center is now a tiny, empty circle. A portal. You're a thread now, Moreau says. Others will follow you, or dream you, or mistake you for a myth. Will I come back here? Only if you need to, he replies. Or if the city does. Outside the hall, the city pulses again, gently, like a sleeping creature rolling over. You realize then that it's not the city that was lost. It was you. You leave the Hall of Threads slowly, your hands still tingling with that strange, warm memory light. Behind you, the spiral pool settles once more, dark and still, as if nothing happened, like it's patiently waiting for the next soul to come whisper their story into it. The city feels different now, not because it's changed, but because you have. You notice more, soft flickers in the corners of buildings, whispers like wind through coral, faint echoes of footsteps that don't belong to anyone here. Or maybe they do, just not now. You find Moreau outside, sitting on a low step that curves around what looks like a garden. Only instead of flowers, there are spiraling plants made of what appears to be translucent sea glass and gently pulsing coral. A few of them hum, very faintly, like they're remembering songs from long ago. This place isn't made of stone, is it? You ask. That he smiles without looking at you. It's made of what you bring to it. That sounds like nonsense, until you look closer. A nearby wall is covered in barnacle-like impressions, and for a moment, it looks exactly like the pattern of your old ship's hull. Another corner has a shadow that resembles a hammock. There's even a scent in the air, tar and pine, just like the barrels in Nassau's East Dock. You didn't bring those things physically, but your memories did. You see the pieces that matter to you, Moreau says, finally turning to face you. The city adapts. It remembers what you remember, but it also forgets what you let go of. That unsettles you more than you expected. You follow him into a narrow alley. The ceiling above you curves into a perfect wave, and the floor glows dimly underfoot. On the walls are murals, spiraling mosaics made from iridescent tiles that shimmer and shift as you pass. They show ships, storms, people, spirals within spirals. Point one of them shows you, not just someone like you, but you, from that first day you met Moreau on the dock, sleep in your eyes, salt on your tongue. How? You start. You were expected, he says simply. You step closer to the mural, half expecting it to fade or blur. It doesn't. It stays solid and real, and the longer you look at it, the more detail emerges. The creases of your shirt, the smudge on your left boot, the thread hanging loose from your sleeve. The city didn't just predict you. It remembered you before you arrived. I don't understand, you say finally. You don't need to, Moreau replies. You're not here to understand. You're here to remember. Remember what? He gestures around you. That the sea is not just water. Its story. He leads you deeper. You pass through chambers filled with items no surface dweller should recognize. Helmets shaped like seashells, scrolls etched onto eel skin, clocks that measure tides instead of time. One room is entirely filled with maps, but they don't chart geography. They chart decisions. Each path, each spiral, branching like coral. Point one is labeled with your name. You touch it. Immediately, you're hit with a flood of moments, not just the ones you lived, but the ones you could have. 1,000 versions of you, threading outward. One where you never met Moreau. One where you took a different ship. One where you stayed on land and opened a bakery. The city knows all of them, but it chose this version, because this version came back. Moreau watches you with quiet eyes. You have to return soon, he says. You feel a tightness in your chest. Back to the surface? He nods. The city doesn't let anyone stay. Not entirely. But you're here. I'm not entirely anything, he says with a shrug. You don't laugh. Not this time. Because you understand now. Moreau isn't just a man. He's a thread. Part person, part memory. A living fragment of something too old to name. Why me? You ask. You followed the spiral, he says. Most people stop when it gets hard, or when they're afraid. But you kept going. You look at your hand again. The spiral is still there. But it's not glowing anymore. It's settled. Does it ever go away? You ask. No, he replies. But eventually it becomes part of your heartbeat. You won't notice it, but the sea will. You hear something then, a deep, soft sound like a giant inhaling. The city is breathing again, and with each breath, the tide rises. Your time here is ending, but instead of panic, you feel peace. Like you've reached the end of a sentence you didn't know you were writing. Like a story, finally told. You follow Moreau back through the city, retracing your steps, but it's different now. Not in how it looks, but in how it feels. The silence has changed. It's no longer watchful or ancient. It's comfortable, familiar, like a goodbye that isn't sad. You pause at the fountain that flows upward, its water swirling in that slow, suspended spiral. Before, you marveled at the magic of it. Now, it just feels right, as if gravity is optional when memory does the heavy lifting. Moreau says nothing. He doesn't need to. Everything he's ever said to you now feels like it's still happening in the air around him, like a story playing in soft echoes. The path back to the ledge, where your ship still waits, is lined with strange lanterns. They don't cast light so much as they erase shadow, softly revealing more of the city as you walk. Your footsteps make no sound, and even your thoughts begin to slow, as if the city is gently wrapping its hands around your mind to hold it still just a little longer. At one turn, you glimpse the basin from the Hall of Threads. Your memory still swirls faintly within it. A tiny spiral, quietly glowing. Not large. Not showy. But there. It will remain long after your body returns to salt and air. You ask. Does everyone leave a memory? Moreau nods. Everyone who listens. Some come here, see nothing, and leave. Why? They're looking for treasure. But this place only gives truth. You turn a corner and stopped out. There's a door now, one you didn't pass before. It's simple, sea-worn wood, bound in coral hinges. The handle is carved into the shape of a spiral seashell. You reach out, and without thinking you knock. The door swings open. Inside is a room filled with hammocks. Hundreds of them, all gently swaying, suspended from beams carved with names. You see yours. Not carved. Grown. The wood has shaped itself into the letters of your name, as if the city is still learning how to write you. You lie down in the hammock. It holds you perfectly. Not just your weight, but your fatigue, your confusion, your quiet all. It holds everything. The ceiling above is made of glass, if glass could breathe, and through it, you see the water above. The ledge. Your ship. Your sky. And the stars, of course, spiraling in the sky the same way the city spirals below. You ask Moreau what happens now. He sits beside the hammock, the way someone might sit at the edge of a sickbed or a berth. Equal parts reverence and worry. You'll return, he says. But not as you were. You laugh a little. I figured that out when I saw my own face blink before me. The surface doesn't understand spirals, he says. It thinks everything is lines. Start here. End there. But you know better now. You nod. Your eyelids grow heavy. But you're not tired. You're just full. Too full of water, and time, and stories. The spiral on your thumb pulses once. The fourth ring appears, complete. Moreau places a seashell in your hand. You don't know why. But you accept it. When you're ready, he says softly, blow into this. You close your eyes. The hammock rocks once. Twice. You're not falling asleep. You're becoming sleep. When you open your eyes again, you're back on the deck of your ship. Everything is wet, quiet, calm. The ledge is behind you. The sea stretches out ahead. Your crew is asleep. And Moreau, gone. The only proof of what you saw is the seashell in your hand, and the fourth ring on your thumb, which now glows faintly only when touched by moonlight. You breathe. Salt air. Familiar now. The sails flutter above you. And somewhere deep below, the city sighs, still watching, still remembering. The days after your return blur like fog on a warm morning. You're back on your ship. Back to the sound of ropes straining, of grog sloshing, of boots thudding dully against wet wood. And yet nothing feels normal. Because you remember. Even when you try not to, it's there. That humming city beneath the water, that spiral on your thumb, the weight of a seashell in your pocket that never quite dries. The crew says little. They look at you differently now. Not out of fear, more like awe, the kind that sailors reserve for things they can't punch, eat, or drink away. They whisper stories when they think you can't hear. She went below. She brought something back. No one sleeps like that unless they've seen the spiral. You catch your reflection in the water one morning, and this time it's just you. No flicker. No phantom. But the moment you look away, you swear the surface winks. You dock in a quiet port 3 days later. Not a bustling city, just a sleepy place where time forgot to check the tide. The innkeeper eyes you warily, as if she senses the sea still clinging to you. You nod politely. Say nothing. That night you dream. But it's not the city. You dream of a spiral, above the sea. A whirl of clouds. A sky storm, circling endlessly, pulling stars into its orbit like forgotten pearls. And in the center of that spiral is nothing. Not darkness. Invitation. You wake before dawn and walk to the dock, where the tide yawns gently against the wood. The spiral on your thumb glows again, just for a second, as if answering a call. Historians still argue whether pirates had secret ports, not just physical ones, but places in the world untouched by empire, unrecorded by cartographers. Whispered docks you could only reach by memory. Some even claim these ports shifted like clouds or dreams, opening only when the sea allowed. You wonder now if those stories were more literal than anyone thought. You leave the port without saying goodbye. The next island you reach isn't on your map. You're not surprised. The coastline curls like a question mark. The trees shimmer slightly when the wind hits them. The sand is white, but not bleached, just naturally, almost rudely bright. A woman waits at the shore. She looks like Moreau, but not exactly. Maybe a cousin. Maybe a sister. Maybe just a memory wearing a face you trust. She doesn't speak, just holds out a spiral pendant, wooden, light, still warm from her skin. You take it. She points inland, to a forest of corkscrew trees, every branch curling inward like a fern afraid of its own leaves. You don't go that way. You return to your ship. But you tie the pendant around your neck. It hums softly when the sails catch full wind. From then on, things change. You no longer fear storms. You no longer fear dreams. Sometimes, when you sleep, you hear the spiral humming again, slow and steady, like the sea remembering its shape. And you feel something in your bones, pulling, not pushing, inviting. You write your logbook in spirals now. Just one continuous line, looping inward. The crew complains they can't read it. You smile. It's not for them. You stop calling yourself captain, not out loud, but something inside you now recognizes that your ship is no longer just yours. You're not steering away from anything anymore. You're spiraling towards something. And whatever it is, it already knows your name. The next storm doesn't come with thunder. It comes with quiet. And no howling wind. No crashing waves. Just a soft shifting of the air, like the world holding its breath. The sky turns gray in layers, like a stack of old parchment, and the sea becomes glassy, expectant. The crew murmurs nervously. You stand at the bow, hand resting on the railing, spiral pendant warm against your chest. You don't issue orders. You just listen. Because you know now, storms aren't obstacles. They're messages. This one is different. You feel it in the way your heart sinks with the roll of the waves. Each swell feels like a sentence. Each gust like punctuation. The spiral on your thumb itches faintly, but not painfully. Like it's waking up. Moreau isn't here. But then again, maybe he never really was. Or maybe he always is. The first drops of rain fall straight down. No wind to drive them sideways. Just a soft tapping against the deck, like fingers drumming a lullaby. You close your eyes, and then you hear it, the hum. Not from the ship, from beneath. It's faint. Deep. The sound of something vast and patient remembering your name. You reach for the wheel. It turns easily in your hands. Too easily. As if the ship wants this heading, you steer into the spiral. The rain increases but never roars. The sky above forms a perfect funnel, clouds rotating slowly, rhythmically, like breath. The crew scrambles at first, but when they see you calm, they still themselves. Trust, born of fear and awe, you pass into the storm's eye, and the world flips, not violently. Just inverts. The sea above, the sky below, the ship between, time folds. You see memories, not just your own. Others. A child in Atlantis holding a glowing shell. A sailor from 100 years ago drawing spirals in the sand. Moreau standing at the base of a stone arch, watching you approach long before you met. The hum grows stronger. The pendant around your neck pulses. You reach the center of the spiral, and there it is. Not a portal, not a doorway. A spiral staircase, made of mist, of stars, of salt. It doesn't rise or fall. It just turns. You leave the wheel. The ship stops on its own, resting peacefully in the center of the impossible eye. You step forward, point 1 foot onto the first stair. It holds. You look back once, at your crew, at the ship, at the world you've known, and then you climb. The staircase turns you inward, not upward. The stars bend. Time forgets itself again. You feel heavy and weightless all at once. At the center is a room. Not large. Not grand. Just a room. One chair. One table. And on it, your logbook. Spiral written. The last line is blank. Waiting. You sit. You write. Not words, exactly. Just motion. Your pen draws the spiral one last time. As you do, the room dissolves. Gently. Like steam. You're no longer in a room. You're in the city. But not the one below. A new one. Built of memory, story, sea, and self. This one's yours. And you are not a visitor this time. You are part of it. Someone, someday, will find the staircase. And when they do, they'll hear your story. Not in words. In spirals. You wake, not suddenly, but gradually, like drifting upward through layers of water. Breath returns first. Then sound, gulls in the distance, rope creaking, the sigh of sails at rest. Finally, light, warm, golden, coming from the wrong side of the sky. Sunset, not sunrise. You're back aboard your ship. Or a ship. It's hard to tell. Everything looks the same, but you feel different in it, like wearing clothes that used to fit perfectly and now tug just slightly at the shoulders. The pendant is gone. So is the spiral from your hand, but you know it's still there, just deeper. In the rhythm of your walk, the lean of your body against the sway of the waves. The way your thoughts loop inward now instead of racing ahead. You still feel the spiral. The crew greets you like no time has passed. Maybe it hasn't. Maybe you dreamed the entire city. Maybe Miro was just a wandering man and with poetic delusions and a talent for cartography. Or maybe this is the dream, and the city was real. You steered the ship toward open water. No maps. No stars. Just instinct. You chart by memory now. Not your memory, but the memory you joined. And still, something hums. Not a sound, this time. A feeling. The sense of being watched, not ominously, but gently. Like the sea is keeping tabs on you. Like it's proud. Your dreams at night are quiet now. No more storms. Just spirals in ink and water. And sometimes, faintly, the voice of Miro saying, remember. Not shouting. Just reminding. You begin to write again. Not in the logbook. In the margins of every sail, every scrap of parchment. You scribble spirals onto empty crates, the underside of spoons, the corner of your boot soles. When asked why, you just smile. They wouldn't understand. The world you left behind, the world above the ledge, beyond the hush of mirror waters and memory cities, keeps turning. Empires rise. Flags change. Historians argue. Cartographers erase and redraw the same coastlines 100 different ways. But beneath it all, the spiral remains. Sometimes it calls, sometimes it waits, but it never forgets. And you're still sailing, still following the curve of your own memory, one quiet loop at a time. Not toward an end, but toward the center. Because the story isn't finished. It just keeps spiraling inward. Forever. So now. As the spiral slowly fades behind your eyelids, let your breath soften. There's nothing left to chase. No maps to decipher. No riddles to solve. Just you, gently adrift in the afterglow of a journey that was never about treasure, or danger, or even discovery. It was about remembering. Not just what came before, but what's been inside you all along. You've walked through a city that breathes in silence and exhales stories. You've listened to voices older than time, touched water that reflects not what you are, but what you might have been. And somewhere beneath all of it, the spiral waited for you. Patient, kind, inevitable. Let it rest now. Let the weight of the day roll off your shoulders like mist off the sea. You are not lost. You are simply turning. Like all things do, when they're ready. The ship beneath you rocks gently in its own rhythm, guided not by compass or command, but by the slow, dreaming memory of the ocean itself. The sails flutter like tired sighs. The lanterns glow with the soft pulse of a story well told. There's nothing left to prove, nothing left to ask, just one last quiet inhale, and a slower, deeper exhale. The world is still here, but it's softer now. Sleep is near. Let it take you, the way the tide takes the shore, steadily, without question, one gentle wave at a time. Close your eyes. You've spiraled far enough for tonight.